I will speak up. Okay, let me just mute everyone so that we can have a... Okay, good morning. It is Chanukah happening starting this week on Thursday evening, the first night of Chanukah. And this class is entitled The Kabbalah of Chanukah. Kabbalah, really, what I mean by Kabbalah is the inner dimension, the deeper meaning behind the holiday. What's behind the menorah? What's behind the latkes? What's behind the dreidel? What's behind that story? Good morning, Cynthia. Good morning, Berta. Great seeing all of you. So, first of all, when it comes to a holiday, a Jewish holiday, there's two parts to each holiday. There is the history of the holiday, the story, how the holiday came to be. And then there are the rituals, the mitzvot that are associated with the holiday. However, the holiday is not only about the history, what happened, but in Kabbalah teaches that each holiday represents a energy, a dimension of a certain energy that was released back then. And not only was it released back then, but it comes around and that energy gets released on the holiday every year in the Jewish calendar. Time, we look at time not as linear, that the further we go, the farther we are from the past, but we look at time as a circular, that every year when we come around the same day in the Jewish calendar, we realign ourselves with the energy of that day. In a sense, Kabbalah says more like a spiral, because every year we go deeper and deeper into the energy. That is also related to a birthday, a Jewish birthday that we celebrate, and a yahrzeit. That's why it's important that we follow the Jewish day, where the energy follows the Jewish calendar, especially for a yahrzeit and for a birthday. So when it comes to the holidays, in general, we have biblical holidays and we have rabbinic holidays. What are the biblical holidays, quick? Pesach, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah. Those are the biblical holidays. We have two rabbinic holidays, Chanukah and Purim. What is Chanukah? What is the story of Chanukah? The Gemara, the Talmud asks, "My Chanukah." What defines Chanukah? We all know more or less the story that Yehuda the Maccabee, who was the leader of the Jews at the time, this is going back in the Second Temple period. The Second Temple stood for 420 years. The First Temple stood for 410 years. The First Temple was built by King David and King Solomon, was destroyed by the Babylonians, by Nebuchadnezzar. The Jews went to Babylonia, Persia for 70 years. At the end of the 7 years, we have the story of Purim, of Haman who wants to kill all the Jews. So first we got the holiday of Purim. The holiday of Purim celebrates what? The miracle of Hashem saving us from the destruction of the Jewish people. Then we come back and the Jewish people come back and we build the Second Temple with the assistance of King Darius, who was the son of Queen Esther. Queen Esther was married to King Ahasuerus, the Persian king. The Jews come back and rebuild the temple, and approximately about 200 years later, so we are in the year about 200, just approximately about 200 years before the Common Era, where the Syrian Greeks, mainly the Greeks, came into power and took over the power in Israel. And we have the story of Chanukah, where there was a war. First, they forbade Jewish practice. The decrees were not was not about killing Jews or getting rid of the Jews. The war was against the performance of Torah and mitzvot. They went and they attacked the temple, They did not destroy the temple. They defiled the temple. What does it mean, defiled? So in Jewish law, we have the laws of purity. Very important to know that. The laws of purity is a spiritual energy that is real, that gets attracted by human contact or by animal contact. For example, a dead person, if you touch a dead person, you contract certain spiritual impurity, which is not negative, it's just a fact, it's a spiritual impurity. And in order to get rid of it, you have to go through a purification process like a mikveh. In order to enter the temple had to be complete 100% in the state of purity. Nobody who came in contact with a dead body was allowed into the temple before going through a purification process. Hence, when you go to Israel today, you'll see around the Temple Mount many mikvaot. People would immerse themselves before going into the temple. Not only is it our people, a human can become in the state of impurity, of tumah, but also vessels. If somebody who is impure touches a vessel, that vessel also becomes impure and needs to be either, depending on the level of impurity, immersed in the mikveh or sometimes destroyed. So the oil of the menorah that was put together had to be always in a state of tahor, of a state of purity, and once it was put together, it was sealed. Once it's sealed, even if you touch it, it's not considered touching unless you unseal it. The Greeks came and they defiled the temple. They did not destroy the temple. They made sure that every item in the temple should become impure. They opened every bottle of oil and they touched it. It's no longer tahor. It's no longer pure. And now you know the rest of the story, right? Okay, they came. But remember, there was a war, and we read in the Chanukah prayer, the war was between a small army, the Maccabees, versus a very powerful army. They won. The Jews won. Now, we don't hear much about that miracle of that war. I mean, this is a war that was a miracle. What do we celebrate? We celebrate Hanukkah, the miracle of the oil, that when they came into the temple to rededicate the temple, they start cleaning out the temple. They will look, the one wish they had was to relight the menorah. So they looked and searched and found one jar that was hidden somewhere that they didn't touch. One jar of oil that was just enough to light the menorah for one day. And one day does not mean one candle, because in the temple, they lit the menorah way before Chanukah, right? The mitzvah of lighting the menorah in the temple was every day, in daytime, as we're going to see later the detail. It had 7 branches, but every day they take one jar of oil that was enough to light each of the 7 candles on the candelabra on the menorah. So it would have taken them 8 days to renew, to produce new oil, because they had to go to the north of Israel. It's a very difficult process how to create pure olive oil for the temple. And the miracle was that one jar of oil lasted for 8 days until they were able to get the supplies. So the whole theme of Chanukah is what? What is the whole theme of Chanukah? The menorah, the lighting of the menorah, the oil. We eat latkes, right? Why do we eat latkes and donuts? Why do we eat all these oily, greasy food? Because we won over the Greeks. The Greeks were very athletic, right? They were into sports. They were into their bodies. So we have to eat the latkes to do the opposite. That's a joke. All right. Point is as follows, as we're going to see why the obsession over the oil, why the obsession over this miracle. now we hardly mention or we celebrate the miracle of the war. Okay, that's kind of the introduction to the storyline. But as the title of the class, the Kabbalah of Chanukah, we're going to go obviously deeper. So let's first understand what's the deeper meaning behind the menorah. I'm going to try today to cover the meaning of menorah, the meaning of the holiday of oil, why we're so obsessed with oil, and in the end, we have time, we'll do a little bit about the dreidel. So it's important, before I forget, that with every holiday, as Kabbalah teaches, there is this tremendous energy that comes with every holiday. When I say energy, energies are blessings. Energies are powers, a powerful energy that we have the ability to recharge, to take that for our lives. We each struggle with certain things. So for example, on Passover, the energy of Passover is freedom. How do we get into the energy of freedom? How do I tap in? Just like when you need to have a receptacle to connect to a certain energy. What is the spiritual receptacle for every energy? It is the mitzvah that comes along with every holiday. So the mitzvahs are not just a beautiful tradition, but the mitzvahs are critical for me to tune in and to absorb this energy. So when I eat matzah, when I drink the 4 cups, I have the ability to tap into the energy of freedom. And Rosh Hashanah is the energy of renewal. On Yom Kippur is the energy of forgiveness. How do I get more strength to get forgiven or forgive others? By fasting on Yom Kippur, by praying on Yom Kippur. On Purim, we celebrate the Jewish body, right? On Purim, they tried to kill us. We're celebrating the Jewish body, which is the survival of the physical existence of the Jewish people, which is joy. Purim is a happy holiday. It's the energy of joy. So by me listening to the Megillah, I understand the deeper meaning of life. That gives me joy. I have the ability to survive all the adversaries that comes against me. Interesting that the difference between Purim and Chanukah, Purim focuses on the body, right? That's why in Purim, one of the mitzvot is to eat, to have a meal. On Chanukah, the focus is on the neshama, on the soul, because the war was a spiritual war. You see, the Greeks, when they came, they didn't destroy the temple, they defiled the temple. The Greeks, unlike the Romans or the Babylonians, didn't care about the existence of the Jew. They had a different problem. Their problem was that to them, they worshipped themselves. They worshipped their bodies. They worshipped their intellect. They worshipped architect. They worshipped science. And they looked at the Jews, and they see the Jews are the people of the books, God's people. They have so much wisdom. They have the Torah. They have so much beautiful culture. They have beautiful buildings. They have a beautiful temple. We can work with them. The Greek sages were always debating and talking and had friends amongst the Jewish sages in the Talmud. Aristotle and Plato and all of them. But the one thing they couldn't stand. They couldn't stand that a Jew doing a mitzvah or studying Torah is not doing it for their own self-gratification. Rather, they do it because it's spiritual. It's godly. They said, Judaism is a beautiful culture. Why are you being so primitive by attaching yourself to something that is abstract? Why do you do a mitzvah and say, I connect to Hashem? Why do you study Torah and say, this is how I connect to Hashem? Matter of fact, there's certain mitzvahs that they said, no problem, do them. There are mitzvahs that we understand, and we have certain mitzvahs we don't understand, yet we still do them. Like kashrut, keeping kosher. It's not a mitzvah that has any logic. Don't tell me that eating kosher is healthier. There's nothing healthy about kugel and schmaltz herring and a good cholent. I'm a living proof. So what is it? What is kashrut? Kashrut it goes under the category of mitzvot that define logic. Why do we do them? Because God asked us to do so. And by me performing this mitzvah, I connect to the essence of God. They said, light your menorah. We love menorah. It's beautiful. But don't come with this purity, spirituality. We're going to make all this oil just like regular oil. We're going to touch them. We're going to make them impure. And that was the war. It's almost, in a sense, and forgive me, my Russian friends here, the difference between Hitler and Stalin, where primarily Hitler's wanted to get rid of the Jews, and Stalin's war was more on religion, to a certain extent. If I remember correctly, and I didn't do the math, but somebody once said that we can do that after class, that the numeric value of Hitler is just, in Hebrew, it's the same numeric value of Haman. And the numeric value of Antiochus, who was the Greek leader, is in the same numeric value of Stalin. I haven't had, well, maybe after class I'll pull out my calculator and try to do that, depending how you spell Antiochus. Okay. Let's go back to the story, to the temple. Let's try to understand what was the purpose for the menorah in the first place, before the story of Chanukah. What was the meaning and purpose of the menorah? And before we try to understand the purpose and meaning of the menorah, what is the purpose and meaning having a temple? So we know in the Torah, the temple the Torah says, build me a temple so I can dwell in it. V'shachanti v'asuli mikdash, build me a temple, v'shachanti betocham, and I can dwell in it. The function of the temple was that this should be a model where godliness is concentrated, where godliness is the focus, where godliness can be found in a much more tangible sense and feeling. Like if you go to Israel, you go to the Western Wall, which is the closest place we Jews are allowed to go. And when you go to the wall, you feel that closeness. It's undescribable. You can't describe it, but you feel a certain closeness. But the purpose was not because God is not limited to one space. The purpose is that from there, the temple should be Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, from Zion, from Israel, from Jerusalem. Torah, which represents Hashem, should be spread out to the world. Similar, the menorah was the symbolism of the Jewish people. The menorah and the temple's purpose was to energize the Jewish people, their souls, so they can take the energy of Hashem and spread it to the world, to be a light unto the nation. And that's why we see differences between menorah of the temple and menorah of Chanukah. Or those who speak Hebrew say that in the Chanukah menorah is not called menorah, it's called the Chanukiah. What are the differences between the menorah and the temple, the menorah of Chanukah? Several differences. Number one, right away you see that the difference is the number of branches. The temple menorah had 7 branches. The Chanukah menorah has 8 branches. Well, you can look at yours, you see 9 branches. Well, one is the shamash, which is not counted as one of the 8, is rather here to serve for the others. In the temple, they didn't have a shamash. So 7 versus 8. Number 2, in the temple, the function of the menorah was the light of menorah is supposed to spread to outside. Matter of fact, the way they built the temple, the windows of the temple, as the Talmud describes it, was opposite the way people built windows back then. The function of a window back then mainly was to bring sunlight into the house. So they would make the windows narrow on the outside and wider on the inside, so the light should spread inside. In the temple, it was the other way around, was narrow in the inside, wider on the outside, because the function was that the light of the menorah should go to the outside. When was the other difference was when was the menorah lit? Menorah was lit by day, and the Chanukah menorah, the obligation is, the mitzvah is to light when it gets dark. Also, where do we place the menorah has a strong difference. In the temple was a big structure. It had chambers after chambers, courtyards, the whole Temple Mount. Where did they place the menorah? In the innermost chamber, on the inside. When it comes to Chanukah, the menorah, in Jewish law says you have to put the menorah by the window, facing the outside. Or in the olden days, outside, they actually put it by the outside entrance of your house. I mentioned briefly that the menorah represents the Jewish people. I didn't explain why. The menorah represents the Jewish people because the menorah is the flame of Hashem. The Jewish people represent the flame of Hashem by the neshama Hashem has given each of us. Ner Hashem nishmas Adam. The soul of man is like a candle. Why is a soul compared to a candle? And you've heard that so many times. I'll give you one extra. You heard so many different reasons, right? Candle flickers, the soul always flickers. Candle is upwards, the soul always wants to go upwards. So in Kabbalah, we learned this in Tanya, in the beginning of Tanya, that everything in this world exists is a combination of 4 elements in the physical world. What are the 4 elements? In Hebrew, Eish, Mayim, fire, water, wind, air, and dust or earth. Everything is a combination of those 4. From all the 4, fire is the most spiritual one. Why? Because fire is infinite. Unlike water or air or earth, it's limited. You can make more out of it. One candle, one flame can kindle infinite amounts of flames. Typically, everything in the physical is limited in its physical space. If I take a cup of water, I can make out of the cup of water 100 cups of water. Everything in the world, everything physical. If I take money and give it to you, that I don't longer have the money. I lose it. When I take a cup of water and give it to you, I lose the cup of water. Not so with fire. I have a candle, I light your candle. My candle's still intact. And with my candle, I can light billions and billions of candles. So that represents the neshama, the spirituality, the godliness, which is infinite. So, Sani, I see you shaking your hand. We'll take questions at the end. So fire is the closest to spirituality. The job of a Jew is to be a menorah. is to share the godliness to the world. 7 branches of the menorah represents the 7 categories of Jews. What are they? Based on my story last week, orange Jews, grape Jews, apple Jews. No. What are the 7 categories of Jews? In Kabbalah, we have 7 attributes of emotions. The first 3 is chesed, kindness, gevura, discipline, tiferes, harmony. Every Jew, and with every, and I say Jew, by extension, every human being possesses 7 different emotions. 3 levels of intellect, 7 levels of emotions. Some people excel in one over the other. Some people are more into the kindness. Some people are more into strictness. Some people are more in be able to put them together. Some people are more into the awe, the fear of Hashem. Some people more into the love of Hashem. So because we have all different types of people, in general, 7 branches of the menorah, every time the Kohen would light the menorah, he would infuse, it's like the power plant, into that category of Jews, the strength and energy to serve God and to be a light unto the nation with what they excel. We see that throughout tefillin. We put on tefillin. We strap 7 times around. When Jacob came down to Egypt, we're going to read next week's parsha. He came with 70. His family was 70. The number 70 represents the 7 types of categories of emotions, representing 7 types of Jews. Each of them is subdivided by the 10 attributes. One more difference between the menorah and in the temple and the menorah of Chanukah. When you light the menorah, you light all 7 in one shot. Every day they will light the same amount of numbers. In Chanukah, we light them first night 1, then 2, then 3, correct? How do I start lighting the menorah? From which side do I light the menorah? From the right side or from the left side? I'm going to ask. If it's right, raise your hands. If it's left, raise your hands. Okay, the answer is that we always start lighting from the left side. If this will be my menorah behind me, and tonight is the last night of Hanukkah, right? I would start, I know now it looks the opposite, I would start from my left with the new one. I start in the first, and the second night I have 2, I would start with the second one, then the first one. Third night, 3, 2, 1, and so on. Always from the left to the right. I start putting the candle on the right side, but lighting, so those who said right, you were correct by putting the candles down. But when it comes to lighting, you always start from the left side. In the temple, they're always lit from the right side. What's the difference between right and left? Right represents strength. Left represents weakness. Even people who are lefty in halacha, if you are lefty, meaning your strength is in your left arm, then your true left is your right arm. Did you know that? When it comes to halachic details, mainly laying of tefillin. And I'm talking here to a crowd of ladies, a woman. Roman, you're here too. But I'll give you another example. When you light candles, which hand do you use to light the candle? The right one. When you put on tefillin, you put tefillin on the left arm. If you're lefty, you put on the right arm, because tefillin is supposed to always be in the weaker part of your body. Because the purpose of tefillin is to bring energy, to bring strength into the weakness. Chanukah versus the temple. As you're going to see, the temple's primary function was to energize itself with the light of Hashem first, and then to share that with the rest of the world. In our service to Hashem, we have two paths. We have the path of positivity, do positivity, do a mitzvah. And on the other path is refrain yourself from the negativity. There are 248 positive commandments, 365 negative commandments. You cannot just have one path. You cannot just focus on one and ignore the other. Just like in a relationship. In a relationship, there is the do's and there's the don'ts, right? You can't tell your spouse, I love you, but I also love somebody else the same way. No, when in a relationship, you love your spouse, everybody else is off limits. So in our day-to-day activity, Hashem has given us positive mitzvahs and negative mitzvahs. The positive focuses on the good, and the negative focus is to refrain from the negative. So the temple model before Chanukah, the model was the idea of emphasizing the positive, emphasizing of the godliness, emphasizing of study Torah. And there, it's inside. There, it's not fighting darkness. It's not arguing with darkness. There, it's filling up its reservoir with the strength that I need to go out before I go out and confront the darkness. Hence, in the temple, the menorah was lit by day. It was lit inside. It was lit from right to left, and the number was 7. Chanukah, on the other hand, the focus on Chanukah, it was a spiritual war. They wanted to get rid of our spiritual connection. So how do we confront the darkness? How do I confront the darkness? How do I confront the challenges? By lighting my menorah, by bringing the light to those places that need help. So, Hillel and Shammai had an argument about how to light the menorah. Hillel said that the way you light the menorah is the first night, you light 1 candle, the second night, 2 candles, like we do. Shammai, who was his best friend, but always argued like good friends, said, no, the first night of Chanukah, you light 8 candles. The second night, 7, and then you go down. Why? He says, because the first night, when they found the jar of oil, that jar of oil had the potential for 8 days. The second day, it had the potential for 7 days. So the numbers were going down. Hillel says, no. The first night, they only knew about 1 day, the miracle. The second day, the second day of the miracle. 2 different opposite logic. We follow Hillel's opinion. But the point of all is that Chanukah has the power to chase away the darkness. And that's the miracle that we celebrate. Which darkness? So when we're going back to communism, for example, right? The war of the Greeks was on the soul of the Jew, not on the body of the Jew. What is the secret of survival of the Jew? What is the secret of survival of the Jew? How is it that we are still around 3,000 years of persecution? How is it that we're still around? Is it the latkes that kept us alive? Is it the matzah balls? It's the big question everybody's trying to figure out. But the Jew always knew what the secret is. The secret of our survival is not our physical strength, rather our spiritual strength, our spiritual connection that we have. And that's not just a nice saying, but actually that is so real. Why? You see, the Greeks were a very cultural people. They believed that the Jews should embrace their religion as a culture. Beautiful, you should make beautiful matzo ball soup. You have beautiful traditions. You should speak Hebrew. You should live in Israel. That's beautiful. You should have studies of Talmud, of Torah. That's fine. But don't study science or Torah or any other intellect as something that originates from Hashem. When a Jew studies science, when a Jew studies any intellect, it looks at it from the lens of Hashem. That they couldn't agree with. So they said, as long as the Jews are cultural people, we can handle it. But if they become spiritual people, now the Jew understood that science is beautiful and architecture is beautiful, but those are just expression of the godliness that exists in everything. And that makes us, our soul, is the same idea. Our survival is not our bodies, our survival is our neshama. And just like God is eternal, our souls are eternal, and the Jewish people are eternal. But how are we eternal? As long as we identify ourselves as such that we are a God, we are part of Hashem in this world, not just a culture. You see, cultures come and go. Judaism is not a culture. We are not bound to a land. We're not bound to a language. Yeah, we have Israel, we have Hebrew, but Jews, there are many Jews who don't live in Israel, who don't speak Hebrew, they still Jews. Why? If you limit Jews to a culture, then the moment that changes, the moment you take a Jew out of that framework of the culture, there is no more Jew. And that has been the tragedy of assimilation. When we reject our spiritual connection to neshama and everything, when we reject Torah mitzvahs as coming from Hashem, and Judaism begins and ends with the physical culture, language, art, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, we are going to do Chanukah because it's a culture. We're going to eat matzahs because it's part of our culture. We're going to study Torah because it's part of our culture. And it begins where I understand and it ends where I don't understand, or it begins where I feel comfortable and it ends where I'm not comfortable. So if I move from Russia to Afghanistan, in Afghanistan, I don't feel comfortable anymore to be a Jew. Or in America. Now I got to be American, I'm a Jew, not Jewish. It has no survival. Netzach Yisrael lo yishakar, the eternity of the Jews does not lie, because the essence of a Jew is Hashem's connection. It is the soul, the neshama, the spirituality of it. That was the underlining roar of Chanukah. That's what we're celebrating, Chanukah. So when you light the menorah, you are not just lighting something to remember a nice piece of history. When you're lighting the menorah, you are actually confronting that same danger that still exists today. and existed throughout our history were always the were people or forces from outside and from within that wanted to eradicate the soul of Judaism. When you light the menorah, you ask Hashem to give you strength, to strengthen your faith, to strengthen your connection to Hashem. And that has the power to dispel all the darkness, the physical darkness that you're experiencing from people who are against you, from nations who are against you, and your inner darkness, those forces inside of you who says, don't be so spiritual. Stop that nonsense. Stop it. Doesn't make any sense. It's abstract. Don't be a person that follows things that are abstract. You're a logical person. Logical person equals Greek philosophy. A Jew is the ability to be logical and transcendence on the same time. That brings us to the latkes, that brings us to the oil, that brings us to the dreidel. So to recap, that's why menorah is outside, because the menorah has the power to spell the darkness, doing it in the evening. That's why it's number 8 and then number 7. 7, which is 7 represents the numbers of affinity, 7 days of the week, 7 attributes of mercy. 8 in Kabbalah represents the number of infinity. Even the way you do an 8, actually, right? You can do endless. So the miracle of Chanukah was the ability to live in a world of nature. We live in a world that is a world of nature, but to discover that the 8, the transcendence, that Hashem, the infinite, exists within nature. Is the ability that when you feel that there's nothing left, that everything is impure, that the world got so dark that I'm giving up. Hashem says you have the soul inside of you that is untainted, that nobody can touch. And if you just open it up, it will create a miracle that from one candle, one challenge, you can overcome another challenge, endless. Oil. What's the deal with the oil? So you know that the best thing to light your menorah is actually with oil. So number 1, make sure you light your menorah with candles. Don't limit it with electric. Of course, you have to be safe, okay? So safety is number 1. But I encourage you to light the menorah with actual candles. There's a certain energy that we're trying to tap into. You know that when it comes to candles, so we have 2 mitzvahs with candles. What are the 2 mitzvahs of candles? Shabbos candles and Chanukah candles, right? And we light a yortzeit candle, but it's not a mitzvah, it's more of a custom. Going back to the idea that the soul is compared to a candle, the flame. But Shabbos candle and Chanukah candle. The Talmud asked the question, if a person has just enough money to buy 1 candle, should he spend the money on the Shabbos candle or Chanukah candle? So I'm going to take a vote. If you think Shabbos candle, raise your hands. If you think Chanukah candle, raise your hands. Nobody? I'm wrong. You're right. Shabbos candle is more important. Why? Because the purpose of Shabbos candle is for shalom bayis. What shalom bayis? Peace in the home. When there's light in the house, there's peace, right? Well, in the olden days, people sat in the dark at night. When you have a candle, lights up, it brings harmony, it brings warmth in the home. But on a deeper level, the Shabbos candle represents the candle the light that doesn't fight the darkness. It's not engaged in any friction. Similar to the temple's candle. Chanukah is a battle. Chanukah, we are engaging in the battle. We're engaging the darkness. I'm ready to fight. There's a time for everything. But in order for me to fight the darkness, I first need to have my own inner strength. A soldier can't go just out in war. He has to first train. So in Torah law, first you have to recharge yourself before you battle with the darkness. So, interesting. Every day we have the same concept. You wake up in the morning, you say Moda Ani Lefanecha. You pray. The first thing you do in the morning is praying. When you pray, it's like the Shabbos candle. You charge your neshama. Your neshama just came back to you in a refreshed way. You absorb it. You identify it. You make it part. You get yourself strengthened. Now I can go out to work. When I go to work, it's war. Work doesn't mean workplace. It means to engage with the mundane. It's if it's eating, if it's going out and interacting with people. If I don't have my inner strength in the morning, I can't engage. So Chanukah gives us the power that we have gained throughout the year. Every time you light the Shabbos candle, every morning you daven, comes once a year for 7 days, for 8 days. Now your focus is to focus on the energy that you can, how you battle the darkness, the inner and the outer. I once asked the Rebbe, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, what is a chassid? What's the definition of a chassid? And he said the definition of a chassid is to be, and he said in Yiddish, a laternachik, to be a lamplighter. Like in the olden days, every shtetl, every town had a lamplighter. They had the light post with the petroleum inside, and the man would go with the stick, and he had a torch, and he would go and light each of those. Hasidic teaching is to light the candle inside of you with the purpose that you can take the light and light up others. Which brings me to the oil. As I mentioned, we should light the menorah with candles, and even the best way to do it is to light it with oil, and from the oil you should light it with olive oil. So if you have a menorah, look out. You have the ability. You can look out for the menorah that has a certain cup, or you can get something like this. This is for like lazy people like myself who don't want to get my hands too dirty with all my kids. They now have pre-made olive oil candles. So they already come with a little cup, and it has, oops, here we go, bring it closer to put, here's my camera. There's olive oil, and it has a wick in the middle. Okay. Amazon.com. Prime shipping. So what's the deal? What's the obsession of oil? We eat latkes, we eat everything food that's made out of oil. So oil is a very unique, has a very unique, what's the right word in English? How do you make oil? So oil has in Kabbalah has 4 qualities that we can reflect on. Number one, olive oil is produced by beating and crushing the ripe olives. So the olive must be severely humbled in order to give oil. Number two, olive oil, and in general, any oil, any material, you can extract olive oil from many different types of material, minerals, plants, animals. There's always going to be some type of oil that you can extract from. Number three, oil does not mix with other liquids. And by number two, because oil gets extracted from everything, when you get oil on you, it also seeps in, right? It always gets greasy and it seeps into everything. So again, oil, you got to crush the olives. Number two, oil, you have to extract, you can extract oil from everything, and oil goes into everything. Number three, oil does not mix with other liquids. When you attempt to mix it, it would always stay separate. And number four, not only will it not mix, oil will rise and float atop any liquid you put it in. So what does it have to do with, what is the meaning behind that? So those four qualities, we know that oil produces light. If a person, if a human being wants to become like oil, a source of light for himself or for his family, you have to learn to cultivate these four components. Number one, the crushing and the pressing of the olive represents the idea of humbleness. If you are self-inflated or you have arrogance, you cannot bring light to others. The first thing you got to learn is to be humble. Number two, what's the idea of oil? What's the idea? What's the direct result when I get oil? It penetrates everything. So when you are egotistic, you are incapable. You're not able to share yourself with others. In order to affect others, you gotta be able to be humble. And if you're humble, your true self comes out. Number three, although you get engaged with others to try to inspire others, that should not be the cause to lose your own individual identity. Right? So the beauty of a good relationship where I can help somebody else or support somebody else or influence somebody else, giving myself to them, is by being a light to them, but not to allow that to diminish my own light. To stay in a way, still keep my individuality, just like the oil, who is separate. And number four, when you go through this process of finding your own inner oil, your own inner essence, and when you can think it's going to take so much work out of me, require for me to be humble, requires for me to connect with somebody else, perhaps it's going to make me worn out. Comes the message of Chanukah, of oil, that oil will always float on the top. If you do what your neshama is ought to do, even if it's exhausting, even if it takes a lot of effort, but that is precisely the way for your neshama to shine strong and stay strong. So this is a little bit idea of oil. I'm going to finish up with the dreidel. Before we go to the dreidel, I'm going to take quick questions. It's been a long class. I'm going to, anybody wants to ask a question? Okay, Mira, you want to?
Rabbi, where we have to put menorah in our house? More close to window or in some special place, or there does not, no difference?
The best place to put your menorah is by the window. If it's, obviously you got to make sure it's a safe place. Always safeties first. Actually in Chabad, there's a custom that we put it opposite the mezuzah. We put it by a door entrance, and we put it opposite the mezuzah. We want it to be next to another mitzvah.
Okay.
So the mezuzah is on the left, on the right side, and the menorah goes on the left side. So you can pick from these two customs. Any other questions? Yeah, Mira, you have to unmute yourself. Mira, you can, Mira.
I have oil menorah from Jerusalem. It's not regular olive oil I'll use for it. It's just special olive oil.
Beautiful, even better.
Yeah, but where I'm gonna get it?
Oh, you're trying to get from Jerusalem?
No, I have it.
What kind of oil we have to use it?
Yeah, not regular olive oil, just special, very clean, refined olive oil, right?
It should be, in the temple, it had to be special olive oil. For
Yeah.
the menorah, any olive oil is fine.
It's good. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
You
you.
want to use oil that doesn't create a certain oil are very thick, so the flames are kind of flickering. They're not really calm.
Mhm.
That's not a very good oil to
So it's
use.
like,
Try to use light something light.
Cold pressed.
Yeah, if you take little cups and just pour a little oil, you can buy any olive oil in the store, and you take some cotton swabs or cotton and you make a little
Wick.
like in the good old times. That works. Make sure that your menorah is on for at least 30 minutes past
I think
sunset.
it's gonna burn like maybe 8 days. It's big cups. Yeah.
You never know.
I don't know. Yeah, and I'm gonna put it outside.
All right. Any other questions? Sandy had a question. Yes. We don't hear you. Oh, your microphone's not working. Sandy, without your question, the class is not complete. It's going to be a problem. You can, if you want, you can chat and type your question in the chat. Do you know how to do that? On the bottom bar, there's a thing called chat. And you click chat, you can type your question, and then everyone can see the question. If you take your mouse on the bottom, where it's next to what says the video, there's a little thing called chat. All right, Bella, what's your question?
When the 7 branches became 8, what was the reason for it? When it happened?
It never became 8 in the temple. It only
I
became,
understand that, but now why do we do it?
right after the Chanukah miracle, after the Chanukah story, the Chanukiah that people had in their homes was made out of 8 branches, not out of 7. So that's when it started, and that's how it continued till today. There's not many, you can make a menorah out of anything. There's no specific way you do the menorah. However, there's a few things that's important about the menorah, because menorah can be made out of any glass or metal or Legos or whatever you want. You can even take, you can take 8 of these cups and just put them on the table and put them next to each other. The thing is that it's important that the candles should be on the same length, same height. I've seen people, or like artists, they make menorahs with different, the branches are different heights. That's not a kosher menorah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Sandy. Anyone on the temple actually see the menorah lit since it was during the day and in a confined area? Good question. Actually, no, they did not see the menorah lit. And precisely that was more the emphasis was not on for the people to see the menorah. The emphasis was for the menorah to be inside and representing Hashem that dwells amongst the temple, and to take that lesson inside of us that we also have to create our own inner menorah, which is to charge all the godliness that we can bring inside of us, for the purpose that I can go out and be like a Chanukah menorah. Chanukah menorah is spreading out. Temple menorah is more inwards. Did the Maccabees also kill Jews who chose to assimilate? And not that I know of. Not that I know of. Yeah, they did. You saying you did it? I can only see your face. Okay, you saw the movie. There were times where people who not just assimilated, but they fought with the Greeks or with the Romans who joined forces. So there's a famous story of Judith and the story of Chanukah, how she killed the Greek general. But I don't know who you're referring to, who they killed. But maybe I'm could be. What's the story of Judith? Anyone know the story of Judith? How she killed the general Greek? The Greek general. The Greek general. You have to understand that if they were caught studying Torah, they were put to death. So the being under Greek, imagine being in Israel today. Imagine being in Israel today, where you have the temple, but the power, the government is Greek. They are dictating the way of life. So there was no freedom of our religion, so the Greek general was in charge, who put in tremendous hardship on the Jews. So, and the Maccabees were trying to figure out how to get rid of them. It was one clever woman by the name of Judith who figured out to break the power. She went to the camp of the Greeks with a lot of wine and cheese. And she came, and she was a beautiful woman, and the general was attracted to her, so he took her in. She served him the heavy wine and the cheese, the Talmud says, and he fell asleep. He was so exhausted, he fell asleep. She took his sword, and she slaughtered him. She took the severed head and placed it on the wall of the camp. When the next morning the soldiers saw the general's head, they escaped in fright. This is the verbatim, the Talmud story of Judith the Maccabee. So go women. Saved thousands of Jews' lives. So she saved not just the Jewish lives, but she saved Judaism in a sense. Yehudis. The first person to die was a Jew who chose to put a thing in front of a Greek statue. Okay, possible. I don't remember, but that's possible. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? Finish up with the dreidel. The dreidel has four sides. Nun, right? Give me the dreidel. So obviously, why do we do the dreidel? So they say the story is that the way the Jews, children, students were studying, they were studying in circles, in hiding, because we're not allowed to study Torah together. And when the Greeks came by to inspect, they would pull out pull out these dreidels and play and hide the scrolls. So hence we play. We have four letters on the dreidel. What are the four letters? Pull out a dreidel. There we go. We have a nun.
Nun.
We have a gimel, a hey, and a shin.
Yeah.
Why does four letters? Because those four letters represent four words. The first letter of each word, nes, which means a miracle. The hey is haya.
Happen.
I'm sorry, sorry again. Nes, gadol, which is the gimel. Oops, gadol. Haya, oops, what's the hey? Haya, sham, which means a great miracle happened there.
There.
If you go to Israel, by the way, there is no letter shin, there's a letter pei.
Yeah.
Nes gadol haya Pa, a great miracle happened here.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
That's why don't buy dreidels made in Israel. Buy them made in China. So you're laughing.
Yeah.
My dreidel made in China. So but obviously there's something deeper to it. So in Kabbalah, which talks about that Nun refers to the word nefesh, which is the soul. Gimel refers to guf, which is the body. Shin represents seichel. You know what seichel means?
Yeah.
You need to have seichel, intellect. And hey is the word for hakol. Hakol means everything. So in general, there are in the human psyche, we are dealing with these four urges. We have urges that come from the body. We have urges that come from the soul. We have urges that come from the intellect, and we have urges that kind of encompassing all of them, which means that in life, sometimes we always are spinning, right, between those forces. Sometimes my body wins and I fall onto the body side. I have a nun. I'm sorry, the soul wins. The nun is the nefesh. Sometimes the gimel, which represents the body. Sometimes the body wins. Sometimes the seichel wins. My intellect wins over. That could be the positive. That can be the negative, right? My body wants to do a mitzvah. That's positive. Sometimes my body doesn't want to do a mitzvah. Wants to do something that is inappropriate. So the key is that don't get discouraged, because what's the key? The key that all of them spin on one axle. And that one axle is Hashem. So remember, as long as you're spinning, life is one spin. But as long as Hashem is the center of your life, no matter where you find yourself, you can always get yourself back up and keep spinning. How's that?
Amazing.
All right.
Very nice.
Beautiful.
Okay. I wish everyone a uplifting and a happy Chanukah. Thursday night, make sure you take out your menorah, light the menorah, encourage others to light the menorah. Come out if you can, celebrate with us.
Thank you.
Join us. We're going to have a very special Zoom event on Saturday nights with Rabbi Jacobson. We have an interesting singer. If you haven't heard of the singer, his name is Nissim Black. He is an African-American Orthodox Hasidic convert. How crazy can you get?
He's great.
He's one last thing. He's a rapper.
Yeah.
He used
Yeah,
to be a really bad rapper.
Yeah.
Changed his ways, converted, became Hasidic, and today he uses his rap to teach youth and others the message of Torah, of Hashem, in a very interesting way. It's a fascinating story. We're going to have the Israeli ambassador to the US, Ron Dermer. Is a program that was put together by Chabad headquarters that was tailored to our Chabad. We're going to have together, we're going to light the menorah on the first part of the segment, 7 o'clock on Saturday night, right here on Zoom. Of course, we have the car parade, which you can come out in a safe way. And thank you for everybody for being here. Wishing you again an uplifting Chanukah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank
And
you.
Alex,
You too.
Alex, you still there?
Yes, I'm here. What's up?
So Alex called me on Friday. He wants to know what's the deeper meaning of Chanukah geld. Why do we give Chanukah geld?
Alex, thank you for Shabbat lunch.
Yeah, thank you for the kiddush.
Yeah, Kiddush.
So Alex, I didn't give you the answer, but now that I see you on class, I'll give you the 30-second answer.
Beautiful.
The idea of the idea is actually connects to the class. So giving Chanukah geld is a Jewish tradition. All right, to give Chanukah geld to your children, to give Chanukah to each other. What's the point? It's not just to give tzedakah. It's actually as a teaching method. What Chanukah means education. Chanukah, chinuch is education. Lechanech. It's an educational purpose. What's the education? The meaning of Chanukah was that we take the mundane and we bring spirituality and godliness in everything. So the most mundane item that we have is money. Because money, you put all your sweat and your life into it to produce the money. When you have money, you have the ability to use it for very selfish and mundane purposes. But the whole purpose of money is to make this world a better place, to bring godliness into the world. So when you give a child Chanukah geld, you're teaching not what the Greeks say, take your money and build yourself a castle. Take your money and indulge yourself. Here we teach a child not only to give tzedakah, but even if you buy yourself a toy, it's a toy, the toy that brings you joy is for the purpose, for a greater purpose, that your life should be joyful so you can help others and be a better person. Chanukah
Wonderful
geld.
meaning. Wonderful,
Huh?
wonderful meaning for that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
the
Don't
answer.
forget to send your Chanukah geld, Andrew.
Yes. On the way. The check is in the mail.
Yes, that's why I have a lot of those checks that are stuck in the mail for years. Just a joke. All right. Well, great seeing everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.